again. This is MNBC One News in English. Looking into the condition of flood-hit Pakistan, IMF releases millions in emergency loan while United Nations officials state that the crisis is so immense that the body cannot alone manage it.
The International Monetary Fund says it is making a $451 million emergency loan to Pakistan available immediately. The IMF said the money would help Pakistan cope in the aftermath of the floods that have affected about 18 million people. It said it hoped its decision would encourage more lending by international donors. Meanwhile, new flooding has been reported from around the town of Dadur near the Indus River in Sindh province. The army is continuing relief efforts, rescuing hundreds of people trapped or isolated by floodwaters in the area. In the meantime, Pakistani flood survivors now face the threat of malaria. As water levels in the rivers drop in part of northwest Pakistan, victims of the flood are divided between those who have lost everything and those with just enough left to get back on their feet. As the floodwaters recede in northern Pakistan, the losers are the poor, who have lost their houses and livestock, and those living close enough to the rivers to be in danger. In some areas, flood victims claiming compensation from the government are furious that they are outnumbered by fraudulent claimants whose houses and lands were unaffected by the rising waters. The fall in water levels in the rivers may mean that the worst is over, but a fresh danger now threatens. All over Pakistan, pools and small lakes left behind by the floods provide ideal breeding grounds for mosquitoes, carrying the parasite that causes malaria. The disease is endemic in Pakistan and its incidence normally increases after monsoon. But this year there is far more stagnant water at the right temperature for mosquitoes to breed in. The local health system is in disarray and people are on the move and more likely to be bitten. Also, a top UN official has stated that the crisis is so huge that the body alone cannot manage it. Speaking at a press conference after her return from a 3-day trip to Pakistan, during which she visited flood-hit areas in Sindh and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Valerie Amos, Under-Secretary General for Humanitarian Affairs and Emergency Relief Coordinator, urged the international community to come together in helping flood-devastated Pakistan.
The Indian government debates whether it should still accept any development aid from Britain. India is currently the biggest recipient of UK development aid, receiving more than £800 million over the last 3 years. Foreign Secretary Nirupama Rao told that no final decision has been made. Britain's Department for International Development DFID says it is reviewing its spending and close dialogue with the Indian government will continue. There are those who argue that a country like India, which has an economy growing at nearly 10% a year and a massive defense budget, simply does not need British developmental assistance. On the other hand, nearly 500 million people in India are still desperately poor, and efforts to reduce global poverty will make no significant progress if those figures do not improve. The top Islamic body in the world's most populous Muslim majority country, Indonesia, opposes France's ban on full face veils. The Indonesia Ulema Council said the issue was of limited importance for Indonesia's roughly 200 million Muslims, with very few women in the Southeast Asian archipelago wearing full face veils. The French Parliament passed a law Tuesday prohibiting wearing a full face veil in public, meaning a ban will come into force early next year if it is not overturned by senior judges. The Senate passed the bill by 246 votes to 1, and having already cleared the lower house in July, the bill will now be reviewed by the Constitutional Council, which has a month to confirm its legality. Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad says in an interview on Wednesday that the fate of the 2 remaining U.S. hikers still in custody lies in the hands of the Iranian judicial system. Ahmadinejad made the comments in Tehran in an interview with NBC that followed the release of American Sarah Short on a $500,000 bail on Tuesday.
The whirlwind departure of the 32-year-old Short to Oman from a Tehran jail brought little change to 2 other Americans. Her fiancé Shane Bora and friend George Fatal still remain behind bars while authorities move towards possible trials on spy charges that could bring up to 10 years in prison if they are convicted. The 3 were detained along the Iraqi border in July 2009. Their families say they were innocent hikers in the scenic mountains of Iraq's Kurdish region, and if they did stray across the border into Iran, they did so unwittingly. Iran, however, has shown no hints of clemency for the 2 20-year-old men. Ahmadinejad has said Short was released on compassionate grounds. Her mother says she has serious medical problems. The interview comes a week before the Iranian leader is scheduled to attend the UN General Assembly in New York. Ahmadinejad is among some 140 world leaders scheduled to attend the annual meeting and a summit to provide the achievement of UN anti-poverty goals that precedes it. During the interview, the Iranian leader was asked about the apparent escalation of tensions in recent weeks over the topic of Quran burning in the US and a proposed mosque near the site of World Trade Center attacks. Ahmadinejad responded saying there was no conflict between the two cultures and blamed a small minority of Americans for fueling the rising anger between Muslims and the Americans. The Iranian leader also questioned whether his US counterpart had full control of his country. Ahmadinejad then openly criticized threat of new sanctions against his country, saying Iran can survive without the aid of the United States and its allies. He said that Iran was justified in bearing further visit by United Nations atomic inspectors. The UN Security Council imposed a fourth round of sanctions in June, saying Iran has refused to suspend uranium enrichment and start negotiation with 5 permanent members and Germany. Tehran says its nuclear program is aimed solely at producing nuclear energy.
Offering a positive note after 2 days of inconclusive Middle East peace negotiations, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas says in Ramallah that he sees no alternative to continuing the talks in search of a peace deal with Israel. Speaking at a welcoming ceremony for visiting U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, Abbas said there is no alternative other than negotiations, and thus they have no alternative other than to continue these efforts. It wasn't clear whether Abbas was suggesting that the Palestinians would remain committed to the talks, even if Israel does not extend a curb on Jewish settlement construction in the West Bank beyond the end of this month. He had previously said the talks could not survive without continued restrictions on the construction in areas the Palestinians want for a future state. Clinton and Abbas met at the Palestinian Authority's headquarters in the West Bank. Abbas thanked the Obama administration for its commitment to finding a deal between Israel and Palestinians, and Clinton reiterated her determination to find compromise. Clinton said that the United States is committed and determined to work for a peace agreement through negotiations that lead to an independent, sovereign and viable Palestinian state that realizes the aspirations of the Palestinian people. Former President Pervez Musharraf, who has announced his intentions to return to Pakistan before the 2013 general elections, will formally launch his new political party and unveil its program in London on the 1st of October. 67-year-old Musharraf is also planning to hold a show of power in Birmingham on the 3rd of October, less than 2 months after a man hurled his shoes at President Asif Ali Zardari during a rally in the same British city with a large population of Pakistani origin. Musharraf will address a public rally at the Oval Banqueting Suite in the Birmingham's Park Hill area 2 days later, media reports said. The meet is being described by Musharraf's aides as a demonstration of the support enjoyed by his new party, the All Pakistan Muslim League, among Pakistanis abroad.